Good morning, guys. It is Monday, April the 13th. This is a morning session here. So hopefully everyone's doing well. Had a nice long weekend. Hopefully had a happy Easter. Got to spend time with your family. This is the morning session from 8:30 to 9. And then again, I'm on from 1 to 2, and then also again 5 to 6 today. So this is um, continuation here of my schedule. I'll wait for a few more minutes here and then I'll go ahead and get started. Looks like there's only one person in here. We're going to talk about the respiratory system this week. Hopefully, you turned in your projects. I'm still kind of going through emails of projects that are turned in. So far, so good on students that turned them in to me last week. So I've gotten some good amount of projects last week, and that was the project on your digestive system, the digestive system travel brochure. So that was for last week. All right, so this week we're going to be talking about the respiratory system. There is a video that was put out yesterday or late last night. Mr. Canelo and I talking about the respiratory system and this week's assignment with that stated on there. And then I'm going to go into some parts of the lesson today on the respiratory system. So if you listen and take some notes, and then you'll have an assignment, like I said, due Friday here on the respiratory system. Same with a brain pop on the respiratory system as well. All right, so if you have any questions, you could also type on the bottom of the chat room there. So there I got just saying good morning. So if you want to state your name or any questions, looks like a few more people are tuning in. Okay, well, I'm going to talk about the respiratory system. Make sure your projects are turned in. I'll be checking throughout the day projects and putting those in for your grade for last week's project on the travel brochure. So I'm going to continue right now with this is a new week, new start, a new body system for this week, and it's the respiratory system. So the respiratory system is basically the oxygen delivery system. Okay, so what that means is the respiratory system is a set of organs that allows a person to breathe and exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide throughout the body. So it's an integrated system of organs involved in the intake of exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the body and the environment, including the nasal passages, your larynx, trachea, bronchial tubes, and then into your lungs. Okay, so those are some of the main parts, and I'll explain those again coming up as well too. Now, the respiratory system performs two major tasks. One of its major tasks is called external respiration. That's the exchanging between the body and the outside environment. The other is called the internal respiration. Bringing in oxygen to the cells and removing carbon dioxide is called internal respiration. So internal and external, we'll kind of talk about the differences between both of those. So some of the main parts that we're going to talk about in this system. There's not as many as there were in the digestive system. Some of them you're going to hear some of their names. They're going to kind of go back and forth between both systems because remember we learned in the digestive system there were some organs called the accessory organs which kind of help with the other parts of their organs there. All right, we got somebody in here. Hello, hi Talon. Looks like Talon's saying hello. Good morning, Talon. Hopefully you had a happy Easter there. So pay attention to today's lesson. We're talking about the respiratory system for today. So like I said, you can write on the sidebar. Now, the nose is one of the main importance. That's where air is brought in. Nose and mouth, all right, are two openings for the air to get into our bodies. All right, other areas is the trachea, which is kind of like the windpipe, which we learned about, or the esophagus. They kind of go hand in hand, but trachea is more for breathing, esophagus more for food traveling through. Um, we have the lungs, and we have what they call bronchi or bronchial tubes inside the lungs, and then we'll have something called alveoli, and then also the diaphragm. Those are some of the main important parts of the respiratory system. Okay, so functions of the respiratory system. There's about maybe 5 or 6 functions that keep the respiratory system pretty much in check. So it supplies the body with oxygen and disposes carbon dioxide and gets rid of it. It filters inspired air, bringing in air, it helps filter it. It produces sound, okay, within that exchange, okay. All right, it contains receptors for smell. It rids body of some excess water and heat, and it helps regulate pH. Okay, so that's our pH system in our body, the blood pH. All right. Breathing, on the other hand, is pulmonary ventilation. It has two phases, or two cyclic phases. They call that inhalation, that is inspiration draws gases into the lungs, taking it in, and exhalation is called expiration, forces gases out. So inhalation, breathing in, and exhalation, going out, that gas going out. Okay, so that is the two processes there, inhalation and exhalation. All right, now the external respiration, going with meaning inspiration is coming in. So air in the outside environment enters the nose and mouth through inspiration, taking it in. All right, and it's composed of the nose and nasal cavity. All right, sinuses. Okay, they call the pharynx, which we learned about in the last, and digestive system is a part of the back of your throat. Okay, the pharynx is the back of your throat, and your larynx as well is another part. And the larynx actually has to deal with is the more the voice box, and we'll talk about that one today too. So all parts of the conducting portion of the respiratory system, so the nose, mouth, throat, and nasal cavity are all part of that, along with the voice box, which is the larynx. Okay? All right. All right. So any questions so far? Okay, we got Faith in here too. I see Faith saying hello as well. So you can ask any questions as we continue. I'm just going to continue. Make sure they're science related, please. Keep them on topic here. Okay, the nose, also called the external nares. Okay, it's divided in two halves called nasal septums. Okay, all right, both on your nose, and it contains the sinuses where the air is warm. Now, it also contains cilia, which are tiny hairs that are responsible for filtering out foreign bodies. So, all inside our nose, we have little hairs there that filter out some things that should not go up there. Okay, all right. Um, Now, the internal nares are the openings to the exterior, okay, the back, okay, and then the external nares are openings to the pharynx, which are the back of the throat. So this helps provide airway for respiration. It moistens and warms entering air. It filters and cleans inspired air, and it actually detects odors in the airstream. Okay, for our nose, this is what our nares are parts of the nasal septum there. Now we talked about the pharynx. Okay, the pharynx was another one that we learned about in the digestive system. So it's basically a common space used by both the respiratory system and the digestive system. So it's commonly called the throat. Okay, is another name for the pharynx. It's more the scientific term for it. So we learned about it when we were chewing and mashing up, talking about mechanical digestion in the last segment on digestive system. So the pharynx, now we're talking about how it's used for breathing. This is what we're learning now for breathing here. All right, so it originates the posterior to the nasal and oral cavities, all right, in the back of your throat, and extends inferior to the part called the larynx and the esophagus. So basically, it's a common pathway for both food and air, the pharynx, okay, which is the back of your throat. And the walls are lined by mucus or mucosa, and it contains skeletal muscles that are primary used for swallowing. Remember, we talked about that last week, called peristalsis. Those muscles that help push that food down. So they kind of work together here. So they're flexible lateral walls in order to force swallowed food into the esophagus. Okay. All right, so and then the pharynx is divided in a couple subsections. We're not going to get into those. They're called the nasal pharynx, the oral pharynx, and the larynopharynx. Those are just separated within the different areas of the pharynx, going down to like the throat. We're going to talk about the larynx next. Okay, the larynx is also known as the voice box. So it's short and somewhat cylindrical airway that ends in the trachea. Okay, the trachea is more your windpipe. Okay, we're going to get that air going down that tube. So, but the larynx, like I said, is the voice box for sound. Okay, when we're talking. All right, and it provides swallowed materials from entering the lower respiratory tract. It conducts air into the lower respiratory tract. Like I said, it produces sound, like when you're talking, you hear someone's voice. And then it's supported by a framework of 9 pieces of cartilage. okay, that are held in place by ligaments and muscles in that area in the larynx. Okay, all right. Any questions so far? Nope, no questions. Okay, excellent. All right, continuing on the respiratory system. The trachea. The trachea after the voice box right in this area here. The trachea is the part below it. Okay, it's a flexible tube called the windpipe. Another name for it is the windpipe. Again, remember this kind of works in line with the esophagus. So it extends through the mid area and lies the anterior esophagus to the larynx. Okay. All right, and there's cartilage rings reinforced and provides rigidity and tracheal walls to ensure the trachea remains open at all times. Okay, so that's keep it open at all times. At this level, the trachea is then into two smaller tubes, a right and left primary bronchia. They're going to branch into these areas as it comes down into the area they call bronchia. They're going to spread, which are going to eventually go into the lungs. So each primary bronchus projects laterally towards each lung. So these are these tubes that are going to connect. They look like tree branches going to connect into your lungs. So that's where the air is coming down through the trachea and into this other area or rigid tree branch-like structure called the bronchi or the bronchus. Okay, all right. So that's another function there. All right. So then going into the lungs, we'll talk about the lungs here next because that's one of the main functions where the gas is exchanged here is the lung. So each lung has a conical shape. Its wide and concave base rests upon a muscular diaphragm. Underneath the lungs is a muscular diaphragm. It goes up and down, okay, which we'll eventually talk about. So it's the lungs superior region is called the apex. It projects into the point of part of like the clavicle as well too. So both the lungs are bordered by a thoracic wall, okay, and is supported by your rib cage, kind of keeps them intact or in place. All right, so toward the midline, the lungs are separated from each other, called the mediastinum. All right, and the relatively broad, round surface in contact with the thoracic wall as well. All right, so that is your lungs. And then there's a right lung and a left lung. So we have two lungs. All right. So the left lung is divided into two lobes. Lobes, LOBs, okay, like spaces there. There's a one smaller than so the smaller than the right lung. The left lung is just a little bit smaller than the right lung, and there's a cardiac notch that accommodates to the heart as well too on the left lung. Okay, the right lung has three lobes. Okay, and it's located more superior in the body due to the liver on the right side where your liver is located. So three lobes for your right lung, two lobes for your left lung. Your left lung is just a little bit smaller, like I said. Okay, and this is where the gas is exchanged, and I'm going to get into that process here next. Okay, so the right lung and left lung or the two parts there. And then let's talk about how the lungs basically work. Okay, let's see. We've got some questions here. All right, let's see here. Before I'm still presenting and talking about the lungs, so you understand what's going on. Okay. Looks like I got Vera. Looks like I got Talon, Soraya. Hello. Okay, project. Yes, there is a project. There will be another project due, and I'll talk about that at the end of the segment. They'll be due on Friday on the respiratory system. So let me continue presenting here. I'm almost through the presentation, and then you could ask, I can explain your project. I did put a video with Mr. Cantalona. We were talking about the respiratory system and your project on what to do. So you could also look at that too on YouTube. I did put it on our Teams page, so you can see that as well. Okay, but let me wrap up on some parts of the lungs here. How do the lungs work? Air enters your lung through a system of pipes called the bronchi. Okay, these are those tubes, like I was saying, look like little tree branches. They're networking into the lungs. All right. The alveoli are where the important work of gas exchange takes place between air and your blood. Okay, that's inside these little sacs called alveoli are inside your inside the bronchi, and they're covered with a network of little vessels called capillaries for blood. So it's important that the air in the alveoli and the blood in the capillaries are very close. So the oxygen, carbon dioxide can move between them. So that's where the exchange takes place in the lungs within the alveoli and the bronchi. All right. So when you breathe in, air comes down the trachea through the bronchi into the alveoli. All right, those are those sacs I was saying inside the lungs from the blood capillaries. All right, this fresh air has lots of oxygen in it, and some of the oxygen will travel across walls of the alveoli into your blood system to help circulate your blood. So respiratory works with cardiovascular system, which we're going to study the circulation and cardiovascular system probably next week. All right. So traveling in opposite direction is carbon dioxide, which crosses the blood into the capillaries and into the air from the alveoli and is breathed out, going out, the carbon dioxide. In this way, you bring into your body the oxygen that you need to live and get rid of the waste product, carbon dioxide, pushing that out, okay, which we learned about before, something you may have learned in previous grades. Okay, so how that lung works. Okay, and like I was saying, the bronchi is where the bronchioles, that's where that area is, the gas exchange takes place. All right. Now breathing. Lungs are sealed in the pleural membranes inside the chest cavity. Okay. At the bottom of the cavity is a large flat muscle called the diaphragm. It's underneath the rib cage there for pushing out. Okay, so that's where that's located there. All right. During inhalation, the diaphragm contracts and the rib cage rises up. Okay. And this expands the volume of the chest cavity. The chest cavity is sealed so that it creates a partial vacuum inside the cavity. And atmospheric pressure fills the lungs as air rushes into the breathing passages as well for breathing. Okay, all right. So that's how breathing is important, and it also often in exhaling is a passive event. So it's passive, so it allows you to push off. And then when the rib cage lowers and the diaphragm relaxes, pressure on the chest cavity is greater and atmospheric pressure and air is pushed out of the lungs. So that diaphragm is a very important part for breathing. When you see the kind of the rib cage going up and down, that's that muscle pushing on that. Okay, I think that's pretty much the basics that I have right here on this system here right now. All right. Okay, looks like Viral. Okay, you watched the video. Okay, looks like Soraya watched it too. Okay. All right. Your assignment. I'll also put this on the Teams page, which I haven't gotten a chance to do that yet this morning. I will put that out there too. Is you are to create a diagram of the respiratory system, like draw, create it. Okay. All right, labeling the parts and what they do. Okay, that's the first part. Okay, the second part is you are to research a respiratory disease. Okay, all right, that can be anything that deals with the respiratory system, respiratory disease or illness. I'll give you some examples. If you have asthma, asthma is a respiratory illness. Okay, that someone has like an inhaler, they use that to help breathe. Okay, that's respiratory illness. You could research asthma. Another one is called emphysema. That's another similar one. These are just some basic ones. Pneumonia. All right, as another respiratory illness. I know what we got going on with this respiratory illness called COVID-19. We're going to save that, so please do not do COVID-19. We're still learning a little bit more about it. We'll probably have you guys do something that towards the end of the year on it as well. Okay, but try to leave that one out. Lung cancer, yes, looks like Talon wrote that in there. Very good. That would be considered one as well too. Lung cancer is a respiratory illness. Someone that smoked for a lot of years may have developed cancer in the lungs. That would be considered one as well. So good job. Another one would be one called cystic fibrosis. You may have heard of that before too. That's where a lot of mucus is built up in the lungs, and it's hard for that person to breathe because the mucus is hard. It's pushing down on the air coming out. So these are just some basic ones. Like I said, asthma, emphysema, cystic fibrosis, lung cancer, pneumonia. You could research, just type in respiratory illnesses or respiratory diseases, and you'll probably get a slew of them, a bunch of them out there. And then you're to do research on it. So you're to provide a paragraph to a page of information on that. So you're drawing a diagram of all the parts and what they do, from your lungs to the trachea to your mouth, your nose, and nasal cavity. Where what they do, and label those parts on a piece of paper, or you could do it like a travel brochure if you want to do it like last week's as well too. Be creative with this, and then you're also including a research on respiratory illness that you're going to research, like I was mentioning some of those ones today. Okay, are there any other questions, comments, or concerns for today? Since I covered the basics on the respiratory system, I will talk more on Wednesday when I'm back on, but I'm just talking about the functions. What we went through all of them today. There was not a lot, not a whole lot. Just I'll go over some of those main functions again of these. Let me just pull them up here, um, of the whole system itself. All right. Okay. So your nose, your mouth, your pharynx, your larynx, trachea. Okay, that's the tube to your lungs. Okay, your bronchi or bronchial tubes. All right, the alveoli and a diaphragm. Those are some of the main ones. Probably about 8 to 10 parts. Let me count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, about 8 functions that you could draw out and label and what they do, along with providing the information of what they do. What did you say, Gavin? Can we do it online? Yeah, you can find this information online and then make it your own. Okay, make it on your piece of paper. Just don't copy and paste something from online. I've gotten a few of those already, so students who do that are losing points. Make sure you are doing what's being told. Okay, all right. Um, so any other questions pertaining to the assignment here? This is a good way to communicate with me. We just covered all the parts of the respiratory system, what they do and their functions for today, along with that. Okay, Val, let me see. Is that the last project? I probably did. I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm sure I did, Val. The digestive one, yeah. Okay, I'll have to double check. I did not go through all my emails, so I'll get back to you on that one, Val. On the digestive systems, more coming in right now. Okay, so yeah, the first part, Veryl, you're drawing the respiratory system. You're labeling the parts and what they do. Second part of the project is you're researching a respiratory illness, like I was going over: asthma, emphysema, cystic fibrosis, lung cancer. Those are types of respiratory illnesses. Research those, or research, just put respiratory illnesses. I'm sure you'll get a slew of different types of illnesses. Pick one, provide some research on how that, what happens to it, what happens to your lungs, what happens to that person's body from being compromised with air. So explain it. Yes, due Friday. All these projects are going to be due Friday. Yep. And I'm going to introduce one every week on Monday. Your project we do Friday. Also, don't forget, I didn't assign you that too, is brain pop. There'll be a brain pop on respiratory system along with vocabulary um, and the quiz, the 10-question quiz like we usually have. Okay, so that'll be also due Friday. I did not put that up yet. I'll be putting that on today too to access brain pop. If you're not doing the brain pops, they're going in the grade book as zeros. So just letting you know that right now, they need to be done too. That means from the last section as well. Last week's one started where I started counting them from. Okay, so make sure on respiratory and digestive system that you're doing them. They are going in as zeros if you don't do them. Okay, so just want to make sure that you are aware of that. Okay. Same with these projects. You don't turn something in, it's going to be a zero. So make sure you're getting your work in, you're turning it in on time. They're going to be due just about every Friday for these projects. So introducing a new topic Monday, and then the projects will be due Friday. So your project will be due this Friday. Good morning, Dylan. Do you have any questions on respiratory system? You could go back and watch the earlier parts of this if you need to. I am going to wrap up a little bit early today. I do have a meeting with teachers today, so I will be back on throughout the day today too. Okay. All right. So your project is on respiratory system. The first part is you're drawing and labeling the parts and tell me what they do. They're explaining their functions. Second part is you're researching a respiratory illness: asthma, emphysema, cystic fibrosis, lung cancer. These are some pneumonia. These are some popular illnesses that happen to people. You may know somebody in your family that may have one of these, okay? Or you yourself may have asthma and carry around an inhaler, okay? So, any other questions? Veryl and Dylan, I don't need question. I don't need dialogue back and forth from you guys here. So keep the questions pertaining to this. Okay. All right. All right, any other questions about the project and the respiratory system? All right, before I sign off, a couple questions. Let's see if you were paying attention here, okay, on the respiratory system. So let me ask you, what is the function of the lungs? Who could answer that? What is the function of the lungs? Anybody can type your answer in. Viral, Talon, Gavin, Dylan, some of the students are in here. What is the function of the lungs? What do the lungs do? Okay, they help us to breathe. Yeah, that's what they do. But what else? What happens there? What is the main function that happens within the lungs? Yeah, they'll help us allow us to breathe. That's very good. Faith and Soraya. All right. But there's something that happens within. Remember, I was talking about the bronchi and the alveoli. What they are parts within the lungs. What is the one of the main functions that happens within the lungs there? Yeah, other than to breathe, it's an exchange of something. I'm giving you a clue. Okay, they bring oxygen to the rest of the body. That's very good. All right, that's what they do. They oxygenate that, and they also have the gas exchange with carbon dioxide. So the main part is gas exchange. Okay, respiration. Very good. Good job, Faith. So yes, the lungs. The main function is where the gas exchange is within there, carbon dioxide and oxygen released. Okay, that's within the alveoli. What's the function of the trachea? Anybody want to answer that one? The trachea. What is the main function of the trachea? Pushes oxygen into the carbon dioxide. Okay, that was from the last one. That was the lungs. Good job, Dylan. Okay, the trachea. Who could tell me what the trachea does? What's the main function of the trachea? Trachea. Okay, it serves as a main passageway through air that passes the upper respiratory to the tract to the lungs. Excellent job, Faith. Good job. So the trachea serves as a main passageway, all right, which is air is passing the upper part from behind the throat all the way down. What was the larynx? Who could tell me what was the larynx? I mentioned that earlier as one of the areas there too. It was behind the pharynx, which was the throat. As you before that, before the trachea, and before behind the throat, the pharynx. There's an area called the larynx. What was the larynx? What's the larynx? I know somebody probably knows in here. Yeah, Bill, I'll put some of the vocabulary words out for these ones, okay? I'll put them out on the Teams page, okay, for the project, okay? All right, Faith says the larynx includes your vocal cords is another name of the voice box. Excellent job, Faith. You're already on top of this, so very good. So it is your vocal cords, it is your voice box. The larynx is your voice box. Very good. So I will put these like 8 to 10 vocabulary words out too with the main parts so you could label them and then provide the meanings to them as well. All right. So yes, you could color it too, Gavin. Excellent. Yeah, you could color this project. It could be colored. Copy and paste. Try not to do that, Viral. Okay, make it your own. Okay. If you were to copy and paste it, make it into your own. Okay. All right. All right. Any other questions? Um, yeah, you could do that. And then provide information on the types of illnesses. And I'll provide some lists of respiratory illnesses that you could research, plus other ones that maybe might not be on the list too. So you could just email me if they're okay. Maybe you know somebody in your family that has a respiratory illness, and you might want to do that one to research that. Okay. All right. All right, excellent so far. All right. All right, guys. Well, I am going to be wrapping up just a little earlier today, but I'll be back on this afternoon at 1 to 2 if you have any more questions, and then talk about the respiratory system and their functions. And just be on the lookout for Microsoft Teams. I'll provide some of the project details and the project details and some of the vocabulary for your diagram and for the types of illnesses that some of the ones you can do. So just to give some examples of. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off early for today, and I will see you guys back on here at 1 to 2 if you have any more questions, or in the evening as well too. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, Viral, Val, Faith, Gavin, Talon, Soraya, some of the ones I've seen in here and had conversations with. So thanks for tuning in and asking questions. And project will be due Friday along with Brain Pop. So you have two things, like I said, and we kind of keep it this way in this system, so you kind of know what just to kind of keep it basic for you guys. Okay, to keep introduce something on Monday and then have a project and Brain Pop on Friday on the systems here. All right, guys. I'm signing off. Make sure you're keeping up with the work, and hopefully you had a nice weekend, and I will see you guys later. All right, guys. Goodbye.